Looks like we're live, Erica.
We are almost live.
Okay.
Okay. Looks like we are live.
Excellent. Well, good morning, everyone. The time is now 9:38, and the meeting for the Woodlow Stokes Community Freedom Public Charter School. I'm going to welcome you to the board meeting. My name is Amy Richardson, Governance Chair of the board. We constitute a quorum for today's meeting. Let's first up is a review and approval of the minutes. The minutes have been distributed in your board packet. Are there any corrections or amendments to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes for the January 2021 meeting are approved. Next on the agenda this morning is the Academic Excellence Committee report. Is Julia on the line?
Julia is actually not on the line. Julia is in the middle. I amended the agenda and neglected to update the live binders, but Julia is in the process of finishing up a round of testing this week, so that what she would like to do at this point, because she wants to be able to provide more robust data after this round of testing. So in the May meeting, she'll be able to provide, as requested, the disaggregated data by race, ethnicity, SPED, financial status that we talked about in the last board meeting, but she can also give information growth data from fall to winter testing. So she will present that information to the Academic Excellence Committee as soon as it is ready, and then present to the full board in May.
Okay. Is there any other information to be presented on behalf of the Academic Excellence Committee? No?
There is not.
Okay. Next up, we will hear from the Finance Committee report. Is Bill presenting this morning?
Bill is presenting. Let me get in touch with him because we're a few minutes ahead of schedule. Give me just a moment and I'll call him.
Amy, while we're waiting, would you like to do a formal approval of the minutes?
Oh, sure. Can I get a motion to approve the March 12th, 2022 board meeting agenda?
So moved.
Can I get a second? Can I get a second?
Second.
Thus, in favor of the motion, we approve the agenda for today's board meeting. Thank you, Tracy.
Absolutely. Would you mind approving also the minutes formally?
I thought we did approve the minutes. We didn't have any comments and corrections made.
I just think that I'd like to make a motion to approve them.
Oh, okay. Can I make a motion to approve the minutes from the January 2022 board meeting?
I move to approve them.
Second.
Second, okay. And all in favor to approve the agenda, the minutes for the agenda, say aye.
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 The minutes are approved. The motion carries and the agenda, the minutes are approved.
Thank you. Bill has joined us now for the Finance Committee report.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay. You're welcome. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And okay, I'm going to share the screen and I'll just get right into it. What I'm presenting today is our December financial statements. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this is how we're doing versus budget as of December 2021. As you can see going, in total, our income is trailing budget by about $300,000. And most of that has to do with our government grants, which I have not really been, the reimbursements haven't gone in yet, so I couldn't post any of the income. We're a little bit behind on our reimbursement schedule, but overall our income, this is a little bit deceiving. I think we're going to exceed our budgeted income for this year, but at this time, as you can see, our public funds are a little bit behind budget. That has to do more with them catching up to what our actual enrollment is than anything else, because as you go through the year, you get 4 payments, and they start with an estimate and they keep going till the third quarter is when they actually true up, based on my recollection, where they actually get to our enrollment and things like that. I think we're actually going to do fine in our per pupil, and same with government funds. I think those will do fine. The one area of concern right now, as you can see, is private grants and donations. They're tracking behind budget, and I think they will continue to track behind budget, because the truth is there's, with COVID and everything going on, it's hard to pursue the private grants when you also have the government grants you're following as well. There's only so many hours in a day you can do that. So unfortunately, I think that trend's going to continue for this year. But overall, or as I said, on versus budget, we're 300,000 behind. I don't think we're going to end the year that way. I think we're going to end up the year income-wise fine. When we get down to expenses, here it gets please note that up top, when you see the red numbers, that's good. On the bottom, if you see black numbers, that's bad, because that's expenses. That means you're spending more than what you budgeted for. As you can see, the top 3 categories, salaries, direct student costs, and occupancy expense, they're all ahead of budget. And once again, I could just say COVID and be done with my report, because just about everything that we're talking about is COVID related. The salary expenses being up, the direct student costs, what you have there is, it's not that we're buying that many more books, but those are the testing programs that when we test the kids every week, the cost of that is in direct student costs. Occupancy, once again, there we're a little bit, part of that has to do with when I budgeted, I underestimated our cleaning costs and our utilities, because I was looking at the prior year when the school was empty, or the school, so that's part of the reason there. But overall, right now, we're looking at expenses exceeding budget by about 300,000. So right now, it looks like we have a deficit versus budget of about 600,000. We still have an operating income, but this is because of where we are during the year. When we get to the end of the year, my estimate right now is we probably will have a deficit based on all the expenses we have. We'll do fine from the income side, but from the expense side, I think probably by the end of the year, I'd estimate we'd have about $350,000 deficit. And considering COVID again, and I keep saying that, I think that's great. It's not great that we have a deficit. I'm just glad it's not a lot larger, and that we're going to survive this year and we're going to do fine and be able to move forward. Are there any questions on the income statement before I go to the balance sheet? Okay. So let's see. Oh. Okay, the balance sheet. As you all know, my favorite number is cash, and that's really the most important number to a school, to a going concern, because we need the money in order to pay our bills. When you look at this, our cash itself versus prior year is down by about $1.4 million. But what I want you to do is look more at the total current assets, which includes the receivables and other current assets. And the reason I bring that up, because the other current assets, the increase of 172,000, that is all because we have a PayPal account, which is not really a bank account, but it is cash. And that money is sitting in the PayPal account. I didn't transfer it into our checking account before the end of December. I did that in January. So that's additional cash that was just a question of moving over to there. So as you look at that, we're down about $1.1 million. But don't forget, we also had the PPP loan, which we've spent down. So that's where all that, the decrease in the funds is the spending down of the loan. And, overall, once again, we're in good shape. We still have a nice reserve. So even with the deficit that I'm projecting, we're going to end the year and we're going to be in a good cash position.
Hey, Bill,
Yeah.
quick question. Can you remind us how much that PPP loan was for? It was 1.2
or 1.4. It was a godsend. I have to say that.
Absolutely.
That was the best thing the government has ever done. So.
Thank you.
And just as another reminder, and Erica, I know this is probably for you, the majority of the things spent from the PPP loan were things I'm assuming like the modular classroom, what type, can you remind us what?
PPP loan primarily was for payroll. I think the actual loan was called Payroll Protection Program. So the primary expenses that came out of that were payroll and facilities related, I believe, Bill. Our modular units and some of those other expenses came out of other grants that we accessed through OSSI. We've received, for the last couple of years, we've received a grant from the city. It's a reopening grant that supports facilities enhancements. We've received grants for testing, COVID testing. We've received grants for healthcare support within the school community, but those were all outside of the PPP grant or loan.
Wait, I'm sorry. So one last question on the PPP loan, and thank you for that clarification. So is the PPP loan, was that like kind of like a one-time offering, like related to COVID? Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, and one final question. I think Eric and Bill, can you confirm it's been forgiven at this point?
Yes, it has.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, Bill. And so we are moving on to the next agenda topic, which is the first part will be the executive director's report. This is going to be divided into both a open session, and then we will move to a portion of the closed session. So, Erica?
Thank you, Amy. Let me share my screen just a moment. Okay, can everyone see that? All righty. Well, oops. Okay. We are going to be reviewing this morning, as we have for the last 2 years, just the general state of COVID within the school community and our school's response. I have some updates on compliance and accreditation issues. A little update on our 25-year renewal and celebration, a review of our middle school and high school planning efforts, and I will request after this particular point in the presentation, the board's approval to move forward with an application to the Public Charter School Board to expand our school enrollment ceiling, and then a review of some upcoming events. Okay, so many of you probably already know that earlier this week, the DC Department of Health released some updated guidelines for schools and childcare centers and colleges and universities that related to COVID. These guidelines are actually aligned with the CDC's updated guidelines, and they have determined that DC is in a low community level of COVID. And so because of this, there are now relaxed requirements in education institutes for COVID testing, for physical distancing, for masking. This is actually cause for, in my opinion, celebration, because it means that we are making some progress in the battle against COVID to the point where we can start. We've been very conservative and had many layers of COVID mitigation in place for the last couple of years, but we're at a point now where we can start relaxing that. So we are very happy with the progress. So within our school community, some of the ways that we have already begun to discuss and plan for relaxing protocols, starting next week, our students and staff will be able to remove their masks when they're outdoors, during recess and during PE. Some of the mitigation layers, like temperature checks of staff and students as they enter the building, and the mandatory health screeners, we will no longer be doing. Our pre-K classes, teachers, coordinators are very excited about the fact that we will be able to set up centers within the pre-K classrooms now and allow for more mixing and mingling and student interaction. And so this is something that the pre-K has been very eager to get to. Also, within all of our classrooms, we're taking down shields. We're leaving shields up on student desks at lunch and snack time for our pre-K students because, as we know, most of them are not vaccinated yet because they're 3 and 4 years old. So we want to maintain some levels of mitigation for them, some additional levels. Let's see. The protocols that are remaining within our school community, for now, we are maintaining our indoor mask mandate. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. We have been aligning ourselves with DCPS and their protocols throughout the pandemic. At the beginning of this week, DCPS announced that they were maintaining their indoor mask requirement. So that was the stance that we took as well. Just for your information, we have been with our partners at Privia Health. They're the healthcare consultants that have been kind of guiding us through our COVID response this year. They have been collecting vaccination cards from students, families of students, and we've determined that about 60% of our students at Brooklyn are unvaccinated, and 75% of the students at Easton are unvaccinated. Again, this is primarily because we have large pre-K populations and they cannot get vaccinated yet. And then there are other families with students who are 5 and above who have opted not to vaccinate their children yet. A couple of weeks ago, we actually started changing our COVID testing protocol within the school community. You may recall that at the beginning of the school year, we had a grant that supported COVID testing. We used those grant funds to implement a saliva-based weekly COVID testing of nearly 100% of our staff and students. That was an expensive endeavor. We predicted at the beginning of the school year that those funds would run out in January, which they did. So we found another CDC supported testing system that's actually free to schools. So we are in the process of switching over to that testing system, which is slightly different. It's not saliva based, it's a shallow nasal swab. And we expect that we will not be testing 100% of staff and students in the near future, but we are going to update our testing protocols as we better understand the updated DC health guidance. So yesterday, there's been a lot of movement this week in terms of COVID and our response, but yesterday, DCPS announced that starting next week, they're going to be dropping their indoor masks mandates. The DC health guidelines, the updated ones that were released earlier this week, allow individual LEAs to set their own protocols and procedures and to do what's best for their communities. So we have been trying to get feedback from our community, from parents. Earlier this week, we sent out a survey to determine how families felt about making masks optional indoors. And as you may imagine, responses are across the board. There are some families that were ready to drop the requirements yesterday. There are other families who have said that they will not send their children to school if we make masking optional indoors. So what our leadership team will do next week on Monday, Monday morning, we are meeting with our Privy Health consultants to determine how to best move forward with the indoor masking requirement. I have some ideas about how I think we're going to move forward. But for the moment, at least for now, we are still requiring the masking requirement indoors. Do I have any questions about any of this?
Erica, I have a quick question. In the announcement from DCPS yesterday, I saw it, but I was wondering, did they make any distinction about their pre-K, or is it mask optional for all grades with DCPS too?
I think it's mask optional for all grades. I do not recall seeing anything about pre-K students and different requirements for them. I think it was just a general, those who want to wear them can, those who don't won't.
Thanks.
Sorry, Robin. First of all, I just want to say, Erica, to you and the team, I just continue to be very, very grateful for your leadership and really your commitment and your just your persistence in continuing to find financial resource to continue to be able to maintain this very strong layered mitigation system that Stokes has had. Again, like I am somewhat aware of what other schools have been challenged with in terms of kind of adhering to these mitigation strategies. And I just want to say, just thinking about what you said about the new protocols with testing and you finding this CDC support, you just have continued to look for resources to maintain this system. And I personally am very grateful and just, really grateful that the school community continues to benefit from your leadership and your constant searching for ways to keep these systems in place, because they have played a huge part in keeping our school community healthy. And so thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'd like to also echo Board Member Adina's comments. Erica, thank you so much for leading the school, or continued leadership with excellence and compassion through these very difficult times. I know there's been never-ending changes over the last 2 full years now, and you're always there to react and keep the best interest of the Stokes community at hand. Please express our gratitude to your staff for their incredible hard work and dedication at all times to our Stokes scholars.
Thank you, Amy. That I was actually going to add that it's not me. There is a team, there's an army. There really is a very dedicated group of people working at the school. I could not do it without them. I do appreciate the words of encouragement. It has been, I don't think anyone could have imagined how challenging the last couple of years would have been, but we have made it this far. There's a little light at the end of the tunnel. And so I am looking forward to the board meeting where we don't have to discuss COVID. But I think Adina had additional comments or question.
Yes. What was my question? My question was, okay, so DCPS, like I think it was, yesterday, sent out their the new protocols, which I believe go into effect next Wednesday.
Correct.
So I'm just curious, like what your thinking is in terms of communicating, communicating to the school community, because because obviously I received the DCPS notice yesterday, know that their policy is going into effect on Wednesday. I know that you're still thinking about it and that you're still gathering responses from the survey that you all sent out, but I'm just curious, like what you're thinking in terms of timeline on when a decision is going to be made about whether or not the Stokes community will be dropping or loosening the mask mandate.
Yes. So Monday morning, a subset of our leadership team will be meeting with our Privia Health consultants to kind of brainstorm, think through, and talk about a timeline. To me, because we have been closely following CDC, DC health guidelines the entire time and aligning ourselves with DCPS, I think that eventually we are going to get to where we drop the indoor mask mandate. Exactly when that will be, I don't know. And I will tell you that one of the things that we want to do is to be able to observe what happens in the community. Like if DCPS is dropping their mask mandate, all the rest of the schools in the DMV are dropping their mask mandate. It won't be long before we know if, the community levels go up as a result of the dropping of the mask mandate. So we'd like to take a look at what happens there. We also, putting all of these mitigation strategies in place over the past couple of years have taken a lot of time. It's, we have built routines around them. So we cannot just drop them because there would be sheer chaos. We have to we have to communicate out to our teachers, socialize that a bit with our community. So if I were to guess, I would say probably a couple of weeks before. We will communicate out next week what our plan is. If there are any additional changes with the indoor mask requirement, my guess at this time is that that would come in the next couple of weeks or so. We're getting, as I mentioned during the presentation, we're getting feedback from all sides, and people are very opinionated on both sides. Those who are pro, dropping the indoor mandate, those who are con, and so it is our job to try to find a middle ground. We're not going to be able to make everybody happy. I personally am keeping my mask on until the end of the school year. That's just the way that I feel. I know that there are others who feel that way as well. But I hope that, have I responded? Have I given you sufficient information to?
No,
Okay.
that's helpful. I appreciate it. I mean, the last thing that I'll say is that, and I know that, again, like, you guys are the experts here and you've done a really good job of kind of figuring out what to do with the information that you're collecting from the school community, in addition to what DCPS and the Department of Health has recommended over these past couple of years, past couple of years. I mean, the only thing that I'll say, and again, like, I feel like these are things that you already know, is that I have been reading that like, posting of case numbers has been lagging from Department of Health, particularly in the past several weeks. So, while, again, I know you guys have been doing a great job of, like, taking in information and guidance from, DOH and DCPS, as well as information that you're getting from the school community. But when you made the point about, how we essentially have been, kind of lining up with what DCPS has been doing, I just want to say out loud that, I just keep reading reports that there have been delays. I mean, there have been delays anyway from reporting from DOH, but they seem to be increasing and have been increasing for the past several weeks. So,
yeah, well, we will continue to closely monitor. Yeah, that is one of the primary reasons that we contracted with Privia Health, because they're public health experts and they know much more about this and can help interpret better than we can. The other thing that I neglected to say is that I know for a fact that other charter schools in the DC area are grappling with the same issues. We're all, I don't know of a single charter school that is prepared to drop all of its levels of mitigation immediately. I know that, I know this because the DC Alliance of Charter Schools just did a survey of charter schools in the area to find out who was planning to align themselves with DCPS, who was planning to, drop masking outdoors or drop it indoors. And I know that half of the charter schools in DC are still planning to keep the masking requirement indoors for now, again, as we see how all of this unfolds. So Stokes is not unique in our response, in our thinking, in our decision making. It's the same kind of conversations, decision making, planning is going on among charter schools throughout the city.
Erica, I'm just curious. So with the DCPS making it mask optional indoors, when you're talking about small children, elementary school age, how will the teachers know what the parents wish? Did they address that in their rollout of knowing whether the parents have decided their child can be mask optional, or whether the elementary school age child might be deciding they would like to be mask optional?
So I did not see that level of detail in DCPS's response. I don't know how they're going to roll this out. I'm not sure how. I cannot envision a circumstance where a teacher would be able to, because it would have to be the teacher who knows,
Right.
Would be able to know for every single family, who wants their child to have their mask on, who wants their child to have their mask off. I will say that children, our kids, I'll speak for Stokes School scholars, have been really, really good about masking. Very diligent. They actually, and I didn't put this in my report, forgot about that. But our third graders at the East End campus just received recognition last month from the CDC for a masking study that they conducted within their school to see who was wearing their mask properly, who wasn't, both students and staff. And so our third graders were the youngest in the country to participate in this study. So they've been serious about, we've all taken all of this very seriously. I think that children who are in families that are pro-mask will likely keep their masks on because it's just a habit that they've built, especially at the elementary school level. I don't know what's going to happen in high school and middle school. They'll probably, they'll do what they do. But our little ones are probably going to, they will likely do what their families suggest that they do. That would be my guess.
Well, it'll be interesting developments.
Every single day, there's something new and interesting. Miss Galladay sent a couple of questions from East End parents that she wanted to be sure that we addressed. And so I just wanted to read them. I think that I've already addressed them in the presentation, but one question was about masking. This parent is very excited that the CDC and DC Health both agree that masks are no longer necessary. Stokes has consistently based masking requirements on these agencies' guidance. So what else needs to happen for masks to become optional at Stokes? Are we waiting on DCPS to go first, or is there something else? COVID in DC is extremely low, and this would be a good time to give the kids a break. So I think I addressed that already. Okay. The second question is about other COVID restrictions. Could the school provide an update as to the remaining COVID mitigations and what the plan is for those? For examples, are field trips allowed, mixing between class cohorts at recess, lunch, after school assemblies? I think I addressed part of that previously, but just to add what I've already shared about the protocols that are staying in place or that are being lifted. We have begun to take field trips, very excited about that. We had classes going on field trips in buses last week, which was a first. So we are going to continue with that. We're really eager to get out and about again and use the District of Columbia as the rich learning environment that it is. We don't have any plans to mix cohorts, and lunch will stay in classes for the moment. Again, that's one of those systems that kind of took time to build, and so to unwind it will also take a little bit of time. Let's see. We are considering scaling back even more on our testing. In the COVID testing, in the recent DC Health guidelines, they said testing was not necessary. However, DC Council still requires schools to test at least 20% of their populations until the end of this month. So at a very minimum, we will continue to do it at that level because it's required by law. But we will probably, that is one of those things, Dina, you asked about when we'll, about announcing updates. And that's one of those things that we will announce an update about the frequency and the amount of testing. Okay. So on to the next. Just a quick update about compliance and monitoring. Excuse me, compliance monitoring and accreditation. You may remember that 3 years ago, Stokes School was the first school in the District of Columbia to receive La Belle France Education accreditation. It's a 3-year accreditation. We submitted an application for renewal last year. We received our renewal a few months ago, and this gives us access again to various resources and trainings, PDs, through the French Embassy and the French government. We actually have several of our teachers, French teachers, who are applying for a training in France this summer, and that is an opportunity through this accreditation program. So we're happy that we are continuing with this. We are now one of 2 schools with this accreditation. DCI is the other. We have also just this week received our mid-year compliance report from the DC Public Charter School Board. This is a review of any complaints that may have been received by PCSB from the community, compliance with other laws and regulations that pertain to public charter schools. It's a review of all of our procurement practices for any of our contracts over $25,000, and an update on our where we are in meeting our school goals. But if you recall, we were not rated last year by PCSB on the performance management framework because of COVID, but we will be soon. The findings from PCSB is that we are compliant without conditions. We did not receive any complaints about our campuses or any of our employees at PCSB for the first half of this year. There are no violations in compliance. All of our procurement contracts are correct and up to date. And if you would like to look at the actual documentation, there is a link in this presentation. The next accreditation compliance reporting is on our Middle States Association accreditation. If you recall, we had a visiting team in December to do our 20-year reaccreditation with Middle States Association. We got the report this week as well. I read through the report. There were no deficiencies noted. There were very few recommendations. In my experience, as someone who has been both on the on a review team and someone who has gone through a couple of these reviews, this was a very good report. It is not the final step in reaccreditation. The report has to be reviewed by Middle States committees, but I expect to be fully accredited, expect the recommendation for full accreditation when the process is complete, and that should be complete within the next couple of months. Questions about any of that? Okay, so all of these compliance, not all of them, but certainly the PCSB review and the Middle States Association review will be taken into account as we go through our 25-year charter renewal, which will be completed next school year. Believe it or not, it feels like we were just at our 20-year renewal. When Erica McGrady was board chair, I remember walking down to Public Charter School Board's office, and we were very excited to complete that review process. But we have another one coming up. So we have to maintain our accreditation. We have to be in good standing with PCSB in order for our charter to be renewed. I think that we are in a good position to complete that renewal, but that is, there are a few other steps in this process of renewing the charter that we will have to complete before next year. But next year, we will celebrate. We will celebrate not only the renewal of the charter, but we will generally celebrate being able to serve children and families in the District of Columbia for 25 years. We will have fundraising activities scheduled throughout the school year next year to support some of our strategic planning goals. And we are working on a major culminating event to take place in school year 23-24, which also happens to be the year that our East End campus will have its first graduating class. Any questions about that? Okay, so middle and high school expansion. We have been thinking, talking, planning since even before our East End campus opened about the possibility of opening a middle school that would eventually grow to high school. We will have to start this process by submitting an application, a charter amendment application to the DC Public Charter School Board. That would take place if we do move forward with this. We would submit an application in the fall of 22. The proposed middle school opening date would be in 2024. The school would serve 6th through 12th grade at full growth, and we would have our first high school graduating class in school year 28-29. Again, the reason that we are looking to do this is the reason that we are looking to open a middle school that would eventually grow to high school is because there's been real growth among language immersion charter elementary schools in Washington, D.C. And because of that, there's an increased demands for seats. Stokes School, as I just mentioned, is going to graduate its 5th grade class at East End and very soon. And as we've talked about previously, DCI, which is where many of our graduating 5th graders go to school now, will not be able to accommodate all of their graduating 5th graders from both the East End campus and the Brooklyn campus. DCI is the only language immersion middle high school, and it is located in Ward 4. There are no middle or high schools in Ward 7 or 8 that offer language immersion programs. We would like to open in that area of the city, closer to our East End campus. We are also open to locating in other wards where facilities are available, because as you know, facilities are one of the biggest challenges for charter schools that are looking to grow. We also want to be sure that the community where we would locate this middle high school is receptive to the idea of a language immersion middle high school. Right now in Ward 7 and 8, there are 10 middle schools. Again, no immersion programs in 7 and 8, no IB middle or high schools in 7 or 8. The middle high school that we are envisioning would be an extension of our current charter at the Public Charter School Board. So graduates from either Brooklyn or East End elementary campuses would be offered admission into that school as long as spaces are available. The 6th grade class we're envisioning opening up with 50 to 75 students. So this would be students from either one of our campuses. There are also other elementary language immersion programs that have an excess, have students who would not have a middle high school with the language immersion program to attend. So we are envisioning that we would attract students not just from Stokes, but from other immersion programs as well. The plan would be similar at the middle high school. The growth trajectory would be similar as with our Easton campus and with our Brooklyn campus. And as we have done historically, we would add a grade level every year until we get to full growth. So if we were in the position of having more applications from Stokes School students than available spaces in a middle school, we would have a lottery among our students. Any non-Stokes School students would be admitted through the normal lottery process. I just want to reiterate here that Stokes School would continue to have the allotted number of spaces at DCI that we have now. So we're not losing those. We are just adding students. So we have more students than available spaces at DCI. And in preparation, even before starting an application for a charter amendment, we have been in conversations and talking about partnering with other language immersion schools in Ward 7 and 8. This includes Houston Elementary, which is a DCPS school. A couple of people from our staff and we met yesterday with some DCPS employees about ways to partner around language immersion. And so right now we're looking at joint partnering and staff professional development because we have similar interests in the language immersion program. Engaging around families. We have a very good record of family engagement, and we're open to partnering with the newer language immersion schools on engaging their families into programming. And we're also talking about out of school time programming, Saturday Academy or summer school, possibly working in conjunction with those two schools and others if they are interested in those areas to prepare for middle school. I think I can skip this. We will be recruiting students and staff in much the same way that we are now. We are in the process. Actually, on Monday, we will be submitting a grant application for a teacher pipeline grant that could support the growth of the partnerships that we already have with Catholic University and Howard University to recruit and hire teachers. We also participate in different ward-based education fairs, the school-wide education. There's an annual My School DC fair. And we would also leverage the networks of our existing staff and families. They have historically proven to be some of our biggest advocates in bringing in new staff and families to our school. And so we would leverage that as well. Now, I'm going to stop my share and Bill will talk a little bit about middle school budgeting. I was hoping you were still there, Bill. Thank you.
Okay, let me bring this up. Okay, what we have here, and please, this is so preliminary. We're just at the planning stages. So what we're doing here as we're laying the groundwork for everything else is also laying the financial framework that we're going to work under as far as, is it economically feasible to open it as well? So what we have here is a very preliminary budget. This is based on, a number of estimates that we make, how much how many square foot we'll need for the place. And these are all assuming that we're going to be able to get the spaces that we want in the amount that we want. We have the preliminary staff, but what we have at the end is as Erica said, we expect to start with 50 students, and that will increase each year. As we go through this, we also put in different estimates for the income, whether it's government funds or, private grants, you name it. At the end of what I would say year one, we'd have like $1.6 million. The assumption here also, as far as the per pupil allowance, is just using what the next year's per pupil allowance is. So as we go down through this, I'm not going to go through each one of these line items. What we get to at the end, to me, this is really nice. I wish we could do this. First year, we'd have a surplus of about 76,000, and that would increase each year. This is just based on what we have. And all this really says is that it's feasible to move forward with the middle school. There's going to be a lot of changes that are made in different areas. But as we go through this, we're able to at least start and say, yes, we can do something like this. And once again, this is very preliminary. The things that we know is how many students we estimate to have, and our staffing requirements, or the staffing requirements that we have right now. Are there any questions?
I assume we'll need a bigger building because we'll have bigger people in the space, right?
Well, yeah, what I did for this is I went back and based on what, I'm not sure if it's OSSI or I think it's OSSI, says what the ideal number of square foot per students is. And I multiplied that by the number of students we have. That's why we go from 10,000 square feet to 17,000 on up. So yes, that's how I came to that.
Thanks, Bill. I don't have any specific questions about the budget, but I do have two questions. One, Erica, can you just provide a reminder about why the focus is in 7 and 8? I mean, I know Ward 7 and 8. I mean, obviously there's a void there, but I'm also curious, given Bill's presentation, like, is there also a cost factor, given the fact that, real estate or facilities might be less expensive in those wards, or is it solely the focus on finding a location, or why Ward 7 and 8 are priority is because of the void?
It's a combination. There are no language immersion middle high schools in that area, so that's one factor. There's a real expressed demand from parents. It is not about it. We would like to have it close to our East End campus if possible, because the other language immersion middle school is on the other side of town. But we are open, given the state of facilities in the district. There's a limited number of places where we could be, unless we built a building, which we don't have time to do right now. So those are kind of the factors that we are looking at. But we are open to going wherever we find a facility. We would like for it to be somewhere where families that are not able currently to access language immersion at the middle high school level, we'd like to locate in an area closer to them.
Mm-hmm. And I should have started off by saying that I actually think it's great that, that we're looking at areas that are currently experiencing a lack of language immersion schools. So my second question is, which is somewhat related to this, is are you, is individual charter school leadership allowed to engage with like local electeds? And again, I'm asking that because, you know, a lot of, for example, council members who represent the different wards,
Yeah.
you know, oftentimes commit to improving a number of things related to education. So I'm just curious, like, as you're looking for a facility, you know, are you even allowed to engage?
So what we can't do is support an individual candidate, right? A political campaign, but we are often in conversation with council members, council member staff, ANC commissioners. These are the people actually that we need on our side because we will need support from the community as we proceed with an application. It is a requirement to have an ANC sign off on our application before we submit to the Public Charter School Board. So yes, we can engage with them. We do. We have in the past, and we will continue to do so in the future because we need them and they need us.
Okay, thank you.
Erica, I had a question related to, you mentioned in your presentation there would be 50 to 75 students initially, I guess in grade 6. But then you also mentioned the partnership with the 2 other schools. Would there be allotted slots for each of the 3 school, or us and our partners, or would this be a school that has our namesake, or you know, how will that work with having the partnership?
That's a very good question. The way that we are envisioning it now is to expand or to amend Elsie Whitlow Stokes Public Charter School Board's charter agreement with the DC Public Charter School Board to allow us to expand our grade levels and our enrollment ceiling. In that configuration, students who are Stokes School students would have automatic entry because it's the same LEA. Students from outside of Stokes School would enter through a lottery process, the citywide lottery. We don't have any kind of preference currently in place for anyone other than a current student of our students, or rather, I'm sorry, a sibling of our current students. They get preference. Children of employees get preference. There is another preference that's slipping my mind right now, but there would not, as in the way that the law is written now, students outside of our school would not have preference. They would need to apply through a lottery process.
Erica, can I ask a question as well?
Please.
Thanks for your comprehensive analysis of middle school and proposed high school. I'm curious around some of the numbers. How many students will we be able to, I know that we'll be able to accommodate between 50 and 75. Will that cover both schools eventually? Like, have you said it so we have enough space between the middle school, high school, as well as DCI to ensure that all of our students have a place to go in middle school?
That should cover. At DCI, we have 40 spaces for our students entering into the 6th grade. And so, you know, we have more than 40 students right now who graduate from the 5th grade. Not all of them go to DCI, but we're envisioning that the majority of the students from the East End campus, or let me not say that, there are students probably at the East End campus who, when they graduate, would apply to DCI. They could also potentially apply to this middle school, but between the graduating 5th grade classes at both of our campuses, when we're at full growth, we could have anywhere from, anywhere from 65 to 80 students graduating at full growth. Let's say we have 40 students from each campus. We have 40 space. That would be a total of 80 students graduating from the 6th grade from the Stokes LEA. We've got 40 spaces allotted at DCI. We would have the 50 to 75 allotted at the middle school, and that is the theoretical middle school. That would allow for people from outside of Stokes School who are interested in attending, a language immersion middle school, another option outside of DCI. So we should have a sufficient number we should be covering our Stokes family with all of those spaces, but also opening up the family to others.
Erica, I have a related question on that one. It's given the interest, especially in Ward 7 around a language immersion middle and high school. Is there and how would there be a way for students who are entering at the middle school who have not had a language immersion elementary school to still access the middle and high school in terms of equity and thinking about what was offered to them in elementary school?
Yeah, now we're getting into the weeds of the program planning, which we haven't worked out completely yet. That's one of the things that we would need to think through before we submit the application. We are also in communication with people at DCI to talk about how they did it, because they did accept students who did not have a language immersion background. It is a complicated process, we know, but those are the things that once we get the okay from the board, we can really start digging in and thinking about how we're going to structure this. But because yes, we would want to ensure equity.
Yeah. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense, Erica. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, Amy, I think we can take a vote now.
Okay, is there a motion? Is the motion for the board to move forward with a application to submit to PC Public Charter School Board to move forward with a middle school expansion and to submit that application in fall of 2022? I think Tracy can give us a concise motion here.
Okay, so I make a motion to submit this request to the DC Public Charter School Board to apply for an amendment to our bylaws and charter to ensure that we can work through this process to build a middle and high school. Does anyone second the motion?
I second that motion, Tracy.
Thank you, Hoyt.
There is a motion and a second for the board to submit an application to the Public Charter School Board to move forward with an extension of our bylaws and to middle school expansion and to submit that application in the fall of 2022. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of a motion to move forward with submitting that application to the Public School Charter Board, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no.
Excuse me,
Oh,
we
I'm
need
sorry.
we need a roll call.
Oh, we need a roll call vote here.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will move forward to our roll call vote. Ms. Moore?
Ms. Moore does not vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, not the vote. I thought you had the list of board
I
members.
do.
Yes.
Hold on just a second.
Mhm.
Just a second here.
I can.
Adina Ellis? Adina?
Aye.
Hoyt King,
Aye.
Tracy Friedlander,
Aye.
Robin Lingo,
Aye.
Erica McGrady,
I've been authorized as a proxy to speak and vote in favor of this by Erica.
Amy Richardson,
Aye.
Janice View.
Aye.
Sounds unanimous. Thank you.
I think also Crystal Galladay gave her proxy to Amy.
Oh, okay. For Crystal Galladay, I will serve as her proxy and she votes aye as well.
Thank you.
So it sounds like we have a unanimous vote. The motion carries to submit a application in the fall to the Public Charter School Board.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I think now is the time where we transition to our closed session. But yes, this is very exciting news. Thank you all. I will be, I know that there are many parents, especially at 8 East End, who will be eager to hear this update. And there are people on staff who are eager to move forward with the application process. So, and this will also aid us in getting some funding in support of the planning process. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Very exciting.
Excuse me, Ms. Bryant and Amy, do we need to do the election? Do we need to do the election of the proposed new trustees? So we are
Close
clear to get this-
closed session.
We're gonna move, just a second. We're gonna move into a closed session. So the next agenda
Okay.
item is to move into the closed executive session to discuss, to plan, discuss, or hear reports concerning ongoing or planned investigations of alleged criminal or civil misconduct or violations of law or regulation, as well as to discuss the appointment of board officers. May I have a motion to enter into a closed executive session?
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay. Do we have any discussion? Okay, are we allowed to have a joint vote on this? Okay, no discussion. So all in favor of a motion to enter into an executive session, please say aye.
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 Are there any in opposition? Say no. Hearing none, the motion carries. The board will now enter into executive session. Erica,
So
if you can provide instructions?
I will, yes, absolutely. I will stop the live stream. I think that we also need a roll call for that vote before I stop the live stream.
Oh,
So for the
okay.
vote to move into executive session, I think that we need a roll call vote.
Okay, and I'll just note, once we do have that, okay, so we need a roll call vote to move into the closed session. Does that have to have a motion or just a vote?
To be on the safe side, let's have a motion.
So
I make
moved.
a motion. I'll make a motion to move into a closed session.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on that? Okay, so we have a hearing none. Let's have a roll call vote on the motion. And Ms. Moore, if you can provide the names.
The names are Adina Ellis,
Aye.
Hoyt King,
Aye.
Tracy Friedlander,
Aye.
Robin Lingo,
Aye.
Erica McGrady,
Aye.
Amy Richardson,
Aye.
Janice View.
Aye.
Okay, Sounds unanimous. Once again, the motion carries. The board will now enter into an executive session, and once the executive session has concluded, we will return to this public meeting to report out on any matters, finish other business, and adjourn the meeting.